We live in a nation fractured not just by ideas, but by the raw, jagged edges of anger and division. The assassination of Charlie Kirk has widened wounds that I think we've been pretending to deal with, exposing a truth that we can no longer deny. Our divisions are killing us, and we must decide whether to heal or to break further apart. Welcome to another supplemental installment of Back Porch Files, part of Your Neighbor on the Left podcast. As always, I'm your host, Don Spielis. I want to cut right to the chase today, if you'll indulge me. The assassination of Charlie Kirk at Utah Valley University on September 10th, 2025, was a despicable act, one I do not condone in any way. It was a brutal, unjustifiable crime, a life taken in a moment of violence that should shake us all. But let me be clear, this act does not erase the divisive rhetoric Charlie Kirk spread during his life. His words, often sharp with disdain for those who disagreed with him, laden with misogyny and racism and misinformation. They often fueled anger and deepened the chasms between us. Yet, no matter how we may have opposed his views, no one deserves to die for their words. Violence is not the answer. It never is. As I record this episode, no suspect has been apprehended or even identified. The shooter remains a shadow, their motives unclear, leaving us gasping for answers in a fog of shock and grief and speculation. But what is clear, painfully so, is the reaction that has followed. Across social media, the conservative response has been overwhelming, not with calls for reflection or unity, but with demands for retribution, for more violence. Prominent voices, from influencers to those in positions of power, have rushed to label this murder as a work of a liberal agenda, fanning flames rather than seeking to douse them. They've pointed fingers before evidence has surfaced, using this tragedy to stoke division rather than heal it. I can only speak for myself, but I can assure you, regardless of this shooter's motives, they don't align with mine or with any other progressives that I personally know. And this rush to judgment stands in stark contrast to the silence we've seen from so many on the right in the face of other atrocities. Just months ago, Minnesota Democratic State Representative Melissa Hortman and her husband were gunned down by a Trump supporter. There was no outrage then, certainly not what we're seeing now. Where were the calls for justice from those now decrying Kirk's death? The selective anger, the cherry-picking of tragedies to fit narratives, reveals a hypocrisy that cuts deep. And of course, we can't forget the deafening quiet from some quarters when mass shootings tear through schools, churches, or malls. The lack of consistent, productive outrage over violence, any violence, exposes a troubling double standard. But beyond that, I find myself longing for a time when tragedy brought us together. I'm not delusional enough to claim nostalgia for a perfect past, but I remember moments in my lifetime when Americans, despite political differences, could set aside partisanship in the face of a horror. After 9/11, after natural disasters, we mourned as one people, or so it seemed. Political division has always existed, but it used to feel like we could pause just for a moment and grieve together. Today, that feels like a distant memory. Instead, every tragedy becomes a weapon, a talking point to bludgeon the other side. We're not just divided by ideas anymore. We seem to be divided by our very humanity. In this podcast, I've always tried to focus my criticism on elected officials and public figures, those who choose the spotlight, who shape the discourse. I don't target average people who simply hold different views. But that distinction seems a bit lost in the current climate. For too many, disagreeing with someone means despising them. Disagreement and dislike don't have to be the same. But we've blurred those lines. We've let our differences become personal, and that's a dangerous path. When we stop seeing each other as neighbors, as fellow Americans, and start seeing enemies, we lose something fundamental. Let me be unequivocal. Violence for political ends is never justified. Never. I may hate the things someone says, but I will always defend their right to say them. Free speech is the bedrock of our democracy, even when it's used to spread ideas that I find repugnant. What shocks me more than the words of people like Charlie Kirk is how many embrace those extreme talking points. That's where my disappointment lies. Not just in the rhetoric itself, but in the willingness of so many to amplify it, to let it define us. I sincerely hope this tragedy doesn't spawn more of the same. I hope leaders on both sides, left, right, and center, will step up, tone down the vitriol, and start seeing us as citizens, as Americans, not just as voters, liberal or conservative. Leadership isn't about rallying your base. It's about uniting people. Without it, this cycle of aggression and violence can only get worse. We need voices that bridge divides, not widen them. As I close, I pray for the soul of Charlie Kirk and for the well-being of his family who are enduring unimaginable pain. But I also pray for those in positions of power, that they might find the courage to lead with compassion and wisdom. They have a choice. They always have a choice. We cannot let this moment define us by more hatred. We have to choose a different path. In the words of Abraham Lincoln, spoken in a time of even greater division, we are not enemies, but friends. We must not be enemies. Though passions may have strained, it must not break our bonds of affection. I still believe that we have more things in common than we do dividing us. Let's hold on to those bonds, however frayed they may be, and try and work towards a future where we grieve together, not apart. And a future where we have, hopefully, far less things to grieve about. That's all I got. That's all I have for you in this short supplemental episode. I'll be back on Tuesday with another full episode. And after putting this episode together, I decided that I'm changing the ending, the way I sign off of these podcasts. So I'm going to say, until next time, be kind, be generous, have the week you'd wish on others.